Hello guys and welcome to the latest episode of Mr. Ashodi's Snapshot Science. Now in today's video we're going to be looking at pollution. So hopefully by the end of this video you're able to 1. State the effects of pesticides with examples. We then want to go on to explain how pollutants can make their way up the food chain. And finally we want to explain the issue of using non-biodegradable plastics. So put that plastic bottle down, let's get right into it. Now let's start by looking at pesticides. Pesticides are essentially substances that kill organisms which damage crops, okay? So insects can be controlled with insecticides, you've got fungicides which can be used to control fungi, and obviously herbicides which we've spoken about before which can be used to control weeds. Now, pesticides can also be used to control disease-transmitting organisms such as mosquitoes, okay? Now pesticides, they're so important because sometimes these pests that damage crops, they can damage up to 1/3 of crops. Okay, so we really need these pesticides to control the insects, fungi, etc. However, pesticides can also cause damage to the environment. An example of a pesticide which can cause damage to the environment is known as DDT. So let's delve into DDT. DDT essentially kills insects, okay? It's what is known as a persistent insecticide. So this means that it does not break down, okay? So it will stay inside the body of any insect, or it can even stay in the soil. This is DDT. Now, any animals that eat the insects will essentially start to accumulate DDT in their bodies the more insects they eat, okay? So imagine a bird that eats an insect which has been affected by pesticides. The bird will start to accumulate large amounts of DDT in their body. Okay? Now as this DDT builds up, it is essentially passed up the food chain. So let's have a little look at this diagram here. You've looked at food chains already. Okay, you can see in the plants, alright, there's only a very small concentration of pesticides here at 0.04 parts per million. But as the pesticide is passed up the food chain to this falcon, you can see the amount of pesticide that's passed to this falcon is a huge number and it's increased a lot, okay? So it can cause great issues. Now, DDT is also known as a non-specific pesticide, which means that yes, it kills the insects that it is meant to kill, but it is also harmful to other organisms. And an example is the peregrine falcon, okay? DDT, if it gets into the peregrine falcon, it can affect breeding. How does it affect breeding? It affects them by making their eggshells very weak. And this means that the eggshells won't hatch. So in many parts of the world, DDT as a pesticide is actually banned. However, there are still a lot of developing countries that are still using DDT for their crops. Okay? Now let's look at another way that the environment is polluted. Let's look at chemical waste. Chemical waste is often released into waterways and is another huge cause of pollution. Okay? Chemical waste often contains heavy metals. So often contains heavy metals such as lead, mercury, cadmium, etc. Okay? Now these substances are very poisonous. They're very harmful. How are they harmful? Because they essentially stop enzymes from working in living organisms. So what happens is the enzymes will essentially not be working and the heavy metals, will end up killing a large number of living organisms, okay? So this chemical waste that gets into waterways is another big pollution factor, okay? Now let's look at plastics. Let's look at that plastic bottle you're just holding right there. Non-biodegradable plastics, okay, they're a man-made material, okay, but they are also a huge problem. Alright, most of them generally are made from fossil fuels, alright, and the reason why they are used, these non-biodegradable plastics, is because they are cheap, they are light in weight, okay, and they can be made into any shape or any colour that we desire. The issue with these plastics is the fact that they are non-biodegradable. What does this mean? It means that they cannot be broken down by decomposers, okay? So what happens is when you throw away these plastics, they start to accumulate. And the first issue is, imagine lots of plastic trash accumulating in the environment. It doesn't look good. It's an eyesore. But there's actually a much deeper problem with throwing away these non-biodegradable plastics. Okay? And the issue is that organisms often get trapped in these plastics, okay, around their neck, etc., and it can kill them. but also organisms such as turtles mistake these plastics for their prey. So turtles often mistake plastics for jellyfish. So they try to eat the plastics fill up their stomach, which means they no longer have space for their actual food, and they end up dying, as this turtle has right here. Alright? A final issue with microplastics is that, or with plastics, is that microplastics have actually been shown to be making their way up the food chain. And if these microplastics are found in fish, they can be found in us if we are eating these fish. Alright, so that's a huge issue. Now finally, what we want to look at as a pollutant is estrogen. Estrogen hormones are essentially taken by some women, okay? And some of these hormones are excreted by women in urine, okay? We've already looked at excretion, haven't we? Now, the estrogen hormone essentially finds its way into waterways via sewage, okay? And things such as fish, mollusks, and other organisms are affected by this estrogen hormone, okay? Estrogen hormone actually prevents testosterone working properly in male animals, okay? And the estrogen actually affects the possibility of a male's ability to have offspring, alright? So, hopefully by the end of this video, you are able to state the effects of pesticides with examples. Hopefully you're also able to explain how pollutants can make their way up the food chain. And finally, hopefully you're able to explain the issue using non-biodegradable plastics. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe and revise. Mr. Oshodi, signing out. Put that plastic bottle in a recycling. Hey.